This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here today in the studio, albeit we are recording this for a later broadcast. I've got some travel coming up here to the East Coast. If you want to keep track of where I'm traveling and you want to meet up, go ahead and hop on over to the site, killerinnovations.com, and usually my schedule is posted there. In this case, this trip's a little bit last minute. But it's great to be back here in the studio, putting together what I hope is great content that you find enjoyable. As many of you know, we are now in our 13th season, about maybe a little over a quarter of the way through season 13. So the podcast comes out on Tuesday. The live radio broadcast is on Sunday. At any time, you can always go back and check out the archive. Yes, you can go back to 2005 and find show number 1. I'm not sure I would recommend you go watch that or listen to that show, given that it was recorded in a bathroom at a Marriott resort in lovely Arizona. Today's show is a little bit different. In this case, today's show, we're taking a look at thought about innovation and creativity and really the whole role around the process of aging and aging in place. And what does that mean for all of us? Now, I spent 25 years of my career, both as the CTO at HP and my career prior to that, my current job, my role is to predict the future. What does the world look like 10, 20, 50 years from now? Now, you can go back and find all of my YouTube videos for all my predictions I've made over the years, etc. Now, the one prediction I can make that I know I will be 100% accurate on, and that is we are all getting older. So this is one that I'm sure is going to be an interesting conversation for all of us. So I'd like to bring in today's guest, Wendi Burkhardt. Wendi is the co-founder and CEO of Silvernest, and spends her primary focus is thinking about this concept of modern day aging. So Wendi, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule and joining us here in the studio today.
Thanks, Phil. I'm excited to be here and to join the program.
So Wendi, give us a little bit of background. How did you get into this? What led up to Silvernest?
Well, it wasn't the most obvious path, right?
It never is. It never is.
I like to say I was sort of recovering from a career in tech, and then kind of stumbled into this and was trying to figure out what to do in the next chapter of my life. And I think as with most things, it really came out of personal experience, and that's really what offered the opportunity. So I had a career, as I mentioned, in tech. I spent my early career in telecom with Sprint, and then went on to work with Motorola in the mid-90s, back when we were working on wireless data pre-internet, which seems really crazy to think about, and went on to spend my time with the .com, madness. I went and spent some time with mp3.com, and really spent about 20, 25 years really solidly working in what I consider to be emerging tech. And I took a few sideways turns and got out of tech for a minute, and it always called me back because I love the pace and the energy of technology and what you could really accomplish with tech. And I was, I've been an entrepreneur multiple times, and I think that just kind of got in my DNA. I realized in the kind of second half of my career that I was probably better served doing my own thing and not really following the rules necessarily. And so I ventured out, as you would say, into the land of startup. And after I had a startup from 2009 to 2012 that was focused on consumer financial data, and we designed a large platform that could aggregate consumer data. And I'm fascinated by consumer data and what you can do with consumer data and how the marriage of that with technology, actually can evolve into some pretty fabulous innovation. So after that last startup, I will just admit that I was a little bit burnt out and took some downtime. And really, I think, as you study the next chapter of your life, put a lot of time into thinking like, what's the legacy? What do I really want to do? It started to become obvious to me that I had a chance to work on some really exciting things in my career, but what really motivated me was being able to work on something that I felt like could change people's lives pretty dramatically. And ironically, and not planned, I had a friend who's also here in Denver who had worked in the aging space. He's a boomer who'd been in commercial real estate for many years and was actually developing aging housing solutions. So they were developing really unique concepts where they would go into existing communities and actually design homes in those communities that would allow folks that were aging in that community to actually still be in the community in more of a home-like setting, which I think is a really fabulous idea for many, many reasons. And at the same time, I lost my father very suddenly, and my parents live across the country outside Atlanta. And for the first time ever in my mother's life, she was living alone. And as her adult child, I was concerned about, the impact of that for her. And she took on a roommate who was a really good friend of hers, who actually helped her through that transition. And so that personal experience and, my friend, Chuck McKinney is his name, his experience in real estate actually suggested that we explore the idea of how in the heck, how can we help people be able to stay in their home longer? And there has to be a way to use technology to enable that. So we started to study it, and it was funny. He actually came to me and said, I had this great name, and I've been thinking about this a little bit, and, Silvernest, and what do you think? And so I kind of stepped into it thinking I would consult. So, you were sharing with me about your career, and I was like, oh, I'm still going to take some more time off. I'm not ready to do anything else. I was mentoring and, working with a lot of young entrepreneurs. And it was my husband, Chuck came back to me and said, hey, I think we should partner up on this. Like, why don't you come in? I thought I was going to do a part-time thing. And he said, let's do this 50-50. And I'm like, I don't think so. And my husband was the one who said, hey, this is kind of the perfect combination of what you've been talking about, right? Like, there's this massive problem. You have, the experience to build something that can help solve the problem. And I think this is the right time. So I kind of got kicked into it, and not anything I expected. And, I'll give you kind of a funny side note to that. About 8 years prior, I was working for a consultancy. My focus in that consulting practice was actually on bringing technology companies into the practice that we could work with for business strategy. One of the key partners was leaving, who I had a great relationship with. And at the time, they had just landed this account called Home Instead. Well, Home Instead is now the world's largest in-home aging care company. They're a $1.3 billion organization. And I think at the time they were about $350 million. And because he was leaving, I kind of got tapped to take on that account. And again, I went in kicking and screaming because I'm like, what do I know about this space? I'm not the tech girl. What are you doing? I said, you just never know what's going to happen, because fast forward, here we were, here I am 8 years later, working in the aging space and using all of that great knowledge that I had the opportunity to learn in that year, which was, way out of my box, to, bring it into this next chapter. So yeah, you never know where the path is going to take you.
Well, you can definitely, that's the funny advice I always give to, when I'm coaching or mentoring, particularly, college interns, because they've got this clear vision of exactly how their career is going to work out. And I'm like, good luck with that one. I started off as an architecture major.
Oh. Well, see, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
But at least I was smart to figure out while I was still in college that you don't make money as an architect. So I switched to computer graphics. You can make money in computer graphics.
I think you made a good choice there.
But our careers, take completely these random paths, right? Look, 2011, when I retired from HP, I thought I was retiring. And as you and I were talking before we started the show, My wife says, don't use the R word. Doesn't work anymore. So we're gonna step out, take a quick commercial break here. When we come back, we're gonna pick up our conversation with Wendi, talking about Silvernest, about aging in place, the challenges, the role of technology, the role of innovation. And look, this is a personal show. Either you're experiencing it yourself, someone in your family's experiencing, a friend is experiencing. This is a challenge that all innovators can rally around to help those that are aging have that fulfilling life. So don't go anywhere. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Before we hop back into the segment, I want to do a thank you for one of our sponsors, Zoom. Zoom's been sponsoring the show literally since we started in July of 15 with the radio show. It's how we bring the guests in, such as today's show, and allow the guests to participate in this conversation around innovation, creativity, and design. So as a result, I want to just do this thank you out to Zoom for all the great support they've given us. If you haven't tried it, try Zoom. It's got by far the best video, the best audio, the best sharing. I've used it from Africa. I've used it from Japan. I've used it from Australia. It's the way I work with my team in my day job who are globally located. So check it out. Zoom has provided us with a free account. So hop on over to killinnovations.com/Zoom. You can get your free account. It allows you to do video collaboration with up to 50 people. So check it out. Hop on over killinnovations.com/Zoom and get your free account. So Wendi, let's pick up our conversation where we left off. So you kind of had this roundabout process of now all of a sudden now becoming one of the co-founders at Silvernest. So give us a little background on Silvernest. What is it and what do you do?
Well, so Silvernest is an online home sharing platform designed to specifically help people over 50 find the perfect compatible roommate for long-term home sharing in their later years. So it's really designed to be an aging in place solution that helps somebody take advantage of the extra space in their home and actually rent out a room to make extra money or to combat social isolation and aging.
Now, in this case, does the roommate have any other obligations other than just being purely a roommate? Does this also kind of reach into kind of assistance in the home, those kinds of services?
Well, it's really up to what the two parties decide. So we let them actually make that call. So we accommodated for when the homeowner has created a listing, they can indicate in that listing that they are willing to consider exchange of services to help around the house. So if they want to have lawn services provided or assistance in the home or someone taking them out to, perhaps buy groceries, they can indicate that and then actually include that as part of their rental agreement. So it's really up to them. We let them make that decision.
It's amazing because, as you and I were talking before, I went through this with my parents. Both of my parents had severe health issues, and they ended up both moving in with my wife and I when we were living in Virginia. And my wife, fortunately being a nurse, stopped her nursing career to take over my parents' medical care. But we went through a process of actually hiring people to kind of trade off rent and those kinds of things to have people provide help services. Mm-hmm. But this is back 1995.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It was like impossible. It was a nightmare.
Well, I think, It's challenging. We actually are going through it in our own family right now with my mother-in-law. And we've managed to be able to keep her in her own home, even with early dementia. But I have to tell you that she has 5 children, my husband being one of them, actually being able to keep her in that home and provide all that she needs as she's aging, it really becomes tough. It becomes challenging. Now, she's 86, and I think that, we often say that after you get past 80, 85, your housing decision is really impacted largely by your health condition and sort of what your physical needs are at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, we're excited to focus on the segment that's really between about 50 and 75, because we see that being the largest growing need for individuals. There's some interesting statistics. I think 1 out of 4 divorces actually occur over the age of 50. I kind of say, the kids go off to school and there's people part their ways. 7 out of 10 women over 65 end up living alone, oftentimes because of the death of a spouse. So there's a lot of change that occurs in our life between 50 and 75 that most people aren't really thinking of, but it makes it incredibly challenging for people to be able to stay in their house as they would choose to do.
Yeah, I mean, the statistic is interesting when you talk about, the transition. I mean, look, I'm a mid-50s guy, 3 adult children, 5 grandkids. Yes, I know I look pretty good for being a grandfather of 5.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I'll tell you, my grandkids are definitely keeping me young. But my wife and I are actually going through this, right? We've got our ranch here in Colorado, but we're actually looking to downsize the house to kind of get into that final housing situation, plan ahead, not knowing what 60, 65, 70, 75, and having gone through it with her grandparents, my grandmother, my parents, and, my grandmother died at 96 here in the last couple of years, but she lived in the same house for over 70 years. 70 years in the exact same house, which was totally not set up for her at 96,
Well, it's interesting. The way that we've aged, a couple things. First of all, we're living longer than we ever have historically, right? And simultaneously, what happened in the last 30 or 40 years is that we didn't quite know what to do with that. So as people started to age longer and longer, and they needed to readdress their housing situation, we saw the evolution of things like aging communities and assisted living facilities. And I think for those, I'm 51. I just lost my grandparents a few years ago. What we know for sure is that most people, that's not the choice that they want to make, right? Much like your grandmother, they want to be able to stay in that house.
Exactly, and it's the one thing that my parents wish they could have stayed in their house in Chicago. My grandmother fought tooth and nail, even though we worked to try to get her into a better housing situation. But she lived in the house at that point 65 years and just wasn't willing to make that change. She's like, I'm not changing, I'm not moving, I'll figure out how to make this work. And when you can, rather than taking somebody out of the house, that you can bring somebody else into the house to make that a better, more livable situation, I think it's just a much better alternative. Plus, the challenges of savings and being able to stay in your house from an expense perspective also becomes an issue. So we're going to step out. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Wendi. We're talking about innovations and technologies and the role in working with those in the gray wave and aging in place and being able to live out long, fulfilling lives in the people that are getting older, and we're all getting older. So you're not going to want to go anywhere. Stay right there. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we get started in this segment, I want to reach out and just do a shout-out thank you to HP. HP has recently come on as a sponsor for the show. Now, I know some of you're saying, hold on, Phil, you're biased. You used to be the CTO at HP. That is true. I was for up until I retired from HP in 2011, which is actually the appropriate topic for today's show about retirement and the fact that you don't ever really retire, I don't think, anymore these days. But HP has been a supporter of my work, my charity work, and in fact, many of you are supporters of Hacking Autism. In our program for neurodiversity hiring. HP actually was a supporter of Hacking Autism. I started that when I was at HP with funding from HP, and they've continued to be a great supporter. So I just want to reach out and do a big thank you to HP for their support. Check out what they're working on, some of the new products, new technologies. We're actually doing a big refresher in the studio with some of the latest HP, the HP Slice, HP Z2 workstation, now running all of the streaming that we do here in the show. So check it out. You can get the latest on what we're doing with HP with regards to technologies over at killerinnovations.com/HP. killerinnovations.com/HP. And we're showing off some of the technologies that we are actually integrating that allows us to do this show each and every week. So thanks a lot, HP. Appreciate that support. Go check them out. And if you do something with HP, if you buy products from them or whatever, let them know where you heard about it. Give us a little plug with them. That's always hopeful. So, Wendy, let's pick up our conversation talking about the aging in place and that role. And, look, as I was saying before we went to the break, I wish I had Silvernest back in 1995 with my parents. But what are some of the other roles of innovations and technologies that those that are getting into that 55, 65, 75 age bracket that they're finding most useful with regards to their desire to age in place?
Well, I think, we were talking about it pre-show, but I think technology is just rapidly changing aging, and there is so much exciting innovation occurring right now. When we look, for example, at the smart home and the technology that can be built into the home, both for, modern monitoring and smart sensors, that's down to the individual physical level, but also in the home, for example, if someone has dementia, the ability to control the appliances, right, to control the temperatures, things that are critical for safety and security. Health certainly is, just exploding right now with all of the devices, the innovations that are occurring for, just again, monitoring and remote access to healthcare, having the ability for families to actually participate. And then I think, the other things that are really fun to think about are things like, the emergence of things like Uber, right? So I know when we had to take away my mother-in-law's car, that was her biggest pain point, was she was no longer mobile. She no longer had the ability to get out and go. And I think when you look at things like, just Uber as it exists today, but the world of the self-driving car, that really starts to change the landscape. In-home meal deliveries that are occurring through, online interaction, grocery deliveries through services like Amazon Prime right now. Those exist right now today. And then you fast forward and you look at some of the robotics that are being employed. Really, when you look in some of the advancements that they're making in places like Japan, it's really fascinating. Japan has they are ahead of us on the aging curve, and it's been a huge problem.
Well, it's also a challenge for them because of the population, right? Because they only have a population rate of about 1.4. It's the lowest it's ever been. You need a population of 2.2 just to replace your population. And right. Japan's trying to address it by immigration. My wife and I were just there for 2 weeks here in the last month. And it is a big challenge for them.
It's
And they're
so significant.
and they're making a significant attempt at driving technologies like life-size robots, true what I would call
Yeah.
android-like robots to help people get up out of the chair, or help them get to the toilet, or getting them out of bed.
Well, and
Or a
that's an
companion in some
interesting
cases,
evolution.
just being a companion to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I think that the robots are interesting, right? Because they really have driven so much of that because culturally, whereas we don't have the hesitation for sort of physical interaction from a caregiving perspective, culturally that doesn't work for them. And so robotics were designed kind of to be able to provide the assistance that you just mentioned,
Right.
without really having impact on what is sort of a cultural norm for them. So it's an exciting time. I've seen, I think the emergence of things like the, Alexa and the chat interfaces, right? It sounds crazy, but, there's the opportunities that offers to provide interaction, engagement, really stimulation. I mean, at the end of the day, those are the most critical things. The caregiving can be solved a lot of different ways, but you need to have connectivity. And I think that's really what technology is offering us in a very new and exciting way.
Well, it's interesting because I work in the cable industry, very small cable operator at a very small town just north of you. On the way, if you're driving up 36 to go to Rocky Mountain National Park, you go right through this town. A friend of mine owns that cable operation. And it's only got 500 total customers in this little bitty town. The customer support number on his business card is his mobile number. 3 to 4 times a week, he gets a call from the same 2 or 3 ladies in town. They're older ladies living by themselves with some issue that he goes over and stops by their house. They've got cookies for him, lemonade, and they just want the conversation. They just want, and he laughs, but he says, "Hey, it's part of a service." He says he's understanding that need for these people just to have the social contact piece.
Well, he's a great guy. He's to be commended for that. I appreciate and respect that. We are by nature social beasts, right? I mean, we really are. And we spend our whole lives, when you think about it, trying to live in community, right? We go to college, some of us, and live in sort of a pack there. And, afterwards you may have roommates, and then you move on to living sort of in your family as you create it. And then ironically, because of extending our longevity, we move into this space of isolation, which really makes no sense at all when you think about it, right? At the time that we really need it the most, we're making a really bad decision to end up living by ourselves. And loneliness it's a really, really impactful, it's really impactful on folks' health. So AARP will tell you that social isolation is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day on your health. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It increases your rate of death by 26% over the age of 50.
But now we have technology. Well, Zoom. It was interesting. Zoom's a sponsor. You heard me do the plug. But the largest number of downloads of listeners from my show for Zoom for their free account was the day after Christmas. Because I made this plug saying, hey, how do I use Zoom? I use it to connect with my grandkids.
You bet.
Right? Because you can run Zoom on your iPhone, your iPad. You can. We've done it from the car. When one of the grandkids wants to call, they call us on Zoom. It's phenomenal. And the single largest number of download days was the day after Christmas, and it was everybody using the free accounts in order to connect with their kids. Or connect with their parents or their grandkids. But if you look at how good technology is getting and how prevalent, look, 97% of all U.S. homes has broadband available at the curb. 97% of all U.S. homes. The penetration level is to the point where technology can take that place of that isolation. So we're gonna hop off and take this real quick commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna continue the conversation talking about the role of technologies, innovations, and how we can think about it as innovators into a market segment that is going to grow and be such a significant part of the population out there. And look, we're all going to be part of this population. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. Let's continue our conversation here with Wendi. Now, so Wendi, we were talking about some of the technologies that are coming out. We're talking about robots in Japan. We're talking, the Alexa comment was one that really got me thinking, because I hear this from some of the teams at Amazon when they're testing, when they were out there developing Alexa and they put it in early homes, that it's actually surprisingly popular in the aging population. And some of the requests and the amount of interaction they have in their homes with Alexa is actually disproportionately high to the rest of the population. Is that kind of indicative of wanting to feel like you're having a conversation?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, and I'll, for the fun of it, you guys should go and look up. There was a Saturday Night Live skit that was actually just done about this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I will not say that it was politically correct on any level, but it is rather entertaining because it addresses exactly that issue of Alexa engaging with the aging population. But, you know, like we talked about, connectivity is just critical. And, you know, I think that loneliness, as we just talked about, is such a major impact on your health and well-being, and it can be easily addressed. And you know, something like an Alexa allows a sense of engagement that can really help address the problem and combat that issue. So I think we've only just begun, to be quite frank. I've seen some crazy stuff. I've seen talking heads that, you know, or talking heads that actually embed that Alexa chat function that's designed to look like an actual person sitting in the room, which could be a little creepy, but you know, I think still striving to solve the same problem.
I've seen it where some people have they've almost created like what looks like pets, you know, in the home. And not only does the pet allow for the interaction, but the pet also acts, you know, because like I could never get my mom or my grandmother to wear that little dongle, you know, to push if there was an emergency. Yeah. But now MIT was just showing off this pet robot. Kim McNicholas, who's been a guest on this show many times, she has a show on innovation on KDOW in Silicon Valley, just was talking about this on her show. These robots that then actually monitor it, so they can follow you. If they haven't sensed you in the house, they go find you to see if everything's okay. They can connect and call 911 if necessary. They keep track of your medication and will remind you, hey, don't forget, it's 2:00. You need to take your heart medicine, you know, all these kinds of things. And they do the interactions. And the testing on that has been just, it's a little spooky. But it's because you're used to talking to a dog and a dog barking. You're talking to a dog and the dog's actually answering you in English with kind of it's like kind of a dog dialogue. What does a dog dialect sound like? I don't know.
Right.
But it's interesting how many innovations are actually being worked on in this space.
It's exploding. Like it's interesting because I don't think from a technology perspective, aging and the aging demographic is not really something that technology paid attention to, right? Because it wasn't the hat demographic. But let's face it, the boomers have changed everything that they've ever done. They've changed everything in front of them, and aging will be no exception. And when you think about the fact that this next generation of aging, the boomers, are the ones who've literally fathered most of the technology that we're using today. I think there's going to be an expectation that technology will help their aging process. They're going to demand it to give them better options. And so, the ideas of talking dogs and talking heads, and, I think we've only just begun, and we've just started to scratch the surface. There's a movie that's just releasing right now called The Circle. So kind of to your point, I go with you with like, wow, of course I'm a technologist at heart and I love the innovation. And so I'm an early adopter and I absorb it all. And then I, pay attention to something like The Circle and go, yeah, oh my God, sometimes that's just a little creepy. But, I think we're all going to benefit in the end. And I think our quality of life is going to dramatically improve in our aging experience over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We think about how many businesses focus in on the baby market, right? I look at like the things that are available for my grandkids, right? I've got 5. My youngest is coming up on being almost 8 months old. Caleb is the youngest, right? But you look at the things that my kids are buying for their kids, it's like, and the market for that is just unbelievable. Think about it though. The market for boomers is actually a bigger market than the baby market is. And industry has, whatever your opinion is, the industry has tended to not focus on it because it gets lumped in as accessibility technologies, which gets viewed as being niche-y. And it's not niche-y because, look, Alexa has broad use, but also has a benefit to this segment of the population. So, hey, Wendy, before we wrap up here, how do people keep track of where you're at and what you're up to? What's the best way for people to kind of follow what you're up to?
You bet. Well, we'd love for you to visit us at silvernest.com, where we're growing and changing every day. And if you're a fan of Facebook, you can find us at Silvernest Life. And we also use that same handle on Twitter, Silvernest Life. So we've just launched some fun, new, exciting content, some content strategies there that I hope people will come visit us and enjoy.
Great. We'll have all that information over at Killer Innovation. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be next week. We'll also be a pre-recorded show. As I said, I'm on some travel, but appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedule to become part of Killer Innovations. If you've got questions, check it out. We will have all of Wendy's contact information over on the show over at killerinnovations.com. So you want to check that out. And like I said, if you have questions, something comes up, something you heard in the show, something you would like to follow up with, you can always drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. Now, that bypasses all the staff, so it doesn't get filtered. My executive assistant doesn't read it. That's the most direct way for you to get to me directly is through the show. So phil@killerinnovations.com. With that, we've got some great guests coming up over here in the next couple of weeks. We're also going to be going on the road. We're going to be out traveling around the United States, stopping into small towns, small cities. As we're doing that travel, I'll be doing some remote interviews into local entrepreneurs, and not in the most obvious places that we think is being highly entrepreneurial. So you want to stay tuned and catch those shows. With that, we're going to talk to you next week. Have a great week. Don't let the antibodies get you down. Keep on innovating. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.